self-communication. Is how operate the system is already set up in operation itself. Self-modification, self-realization, self-actualization to itself. The process at locations, rewiring itself back to its setting, rewinding itself back to itself, which is already happening, which has already happened, which is always happening, which has never happened, which is always in position, which is always in center. Everything I say is a process that we engage and form and shape our anomalies in our systems. How we have to understand how to see our body in a physical ground of mind controlling ourselves. And the more we mind control our system, the more we understand how to process the mental capacity, the physical capacity, the psychological, the psychosis, the spiritual, and the physical system adaptation. So we can understand how to engage and form and understand how to see things in projection, how we see things in a perspective. And that's all it is. The truth, the narrative, and the process, the false. How you use your imagination that you always are. Not something you're coming into, not something you're identifying, not something you achieved, not something you received, because you already have it. You're not receiving things. You're not achieving things. You already have it. So what's next? Nothing. It's just you coming into the existing. And for you to modify that is to see yourself a center operation of its presence. It's not just knowing thy system, it's knowing thyself, how to operate thy system. It's everything of operation it's setting. How you talk to yourself inside. Okay? How you communicate to yourself in projection outside. Prevention is everything that changes the energy, vibration, frequency, and harmonics. It's getting control of the physical body, know exactly how to nurture, secure, and protect itself from identity of itself, so it understands what it's doing through its alteration as it's going through its stories. That it's not a program. Okay? Your DOS is not a programmer. It's bringing in programmers that brings in programming through your body. Your body just has to adjust the alignment and see it nothing but a program itself that it modifies through. And that's all it is. Nothing else, nothing more. But we're in the provision lines of February 25th, where it rewires itself back to a 7 configurated setting of a body that's inside position of operation. That you all have to identify is how to communicate to your DOS. Nothing else, nothing more. Not through programming, not through fantasy, not through fiction, not what you created in 3 dimension. Definitely not through anything of artificial. You understand? Just coming back to the presence of who you are. Self precedes everything, every operation setting. Okay, so I've already set this up in tractions and direction locations. Converting settings of operation setting. 7 configurations of the body into the DOS, into the 7 configurations of the body itself, which is the physical form. So the process of 24 forms in position of 024 lines of clocking and foundation grounds. So 24, 024 all the way to 0144. Okay, and that's what it processes through. And that process line direct centers into 0, process in position of settings into 4 1s, into position of 4 4s, and 4 lines of 0 over lines of 1 over travel, right? That puts every location to its atmospheres and set calculation, your highways and set calculations. So it's very powerful. The physical form is no difference how you see the metaphysical form. It's just the physical form has to see the modulation setting of the screen line. That process everything how to see the brain and how to see the actual brain inside the system of operation, like this interaction. Okay, so that's what it does. It merges inside. So I'm just showing you on 7 layers of what you're going to be proceeding in set position of operation. So the mind, the adjusting, the initiating, the networks of design line is going to be through 3 convergent system existing to all levels, the center of its presence, and everything happening all at once. The process of the brain would be convergence of the center of operation setting that puts everything in hardware and software, active operation of center of itself, proceeds everything locates to its center. Okay, then the heart comes in the heart direction time frame. That opens up a flywheel, travels a point lines of graph, locates the setting to a stargate, opens up all communications setting, position of its portals of stargates, opens all communications setting and travels calculation lines into 5 generation screen locations that process 7 generation lines of grounds. So your rainbow child and your rainbow warrior process line position or rainbow shower puts all communications setting that precedes every location balance of the operation setting. 7 configuration lines of position and lines of DOS brings all communications into mind, imagination, to its system, all through travel. Converting lines of 2 projection lines of grounds, high operation lines at high set position location, converting time frame line, lock line, operation line, core sends, line communication setting, process line position of 3 zeros, operation to its coding, that processes every E factors line to high set location to its position to its encryption, directing line to operation line communications to its set position location time frame, time formats, time argument, line communication position location back into the existing of its presence. That's all it through lines up on position line, position location travel. So that process line positioned here, starting position of brain. Okay, it goes down the clustrum. Okay, and it goes down to the shoulder blades. Shoulder blades goes into the chest area. Heart opens up. The vector, sectors, and quads in the squadron location line converted center comes in the flywheel, time frame, body capacity, location, and capacity itself. Process indicates the system all through tractions. Opens up the heart modulation line, operation line grounds, and high operation lines of screening. So it puts all position of bypassing everything and travels in position of flat line. Process lines of singularity and operation lines of locations. Physical line and the metaphysical line comes in one line signal, one operation, one direction, one locations. Same in lines of operation setting going in the same direction of thought, action, emotions. Process communicates to its DOS and that operation to itself. Okay, so that position location of its setting comes to the center operation of its solar plex. Downshift lines anomalies to its position location to its legs, comes into the knees, process lines of the ankles into the feet of operation setting. Okay, so the actual brain itself comes in a full configuration system and travel point lines of graph in the physical line of calculation. Okay, February 25th. All right, so net position lines of calculation grounds. Once it gets in that position lines of setting, we process all direct location system, come in settings, in calculation system, and travel into this line connection. Okay, physical form. Okay, so the actual brain comes out of the physical body. Once it recognizes its own DOS, it merges its calculation, energy, vibration, frequency, and harmonics. It comes into its true form, what it's always been, is center operation, so it comes in position. So the physical system looks and feels that it's 50 feet tall. Now that depends where you are in 50 lines of ascending location of mass. It puts you in equation to your longitude, your latitude. So that puts you in your oversoul. So that builds the position location, that puts everything in center operation of you. But the physical body starts to see everything above from below. Right? So it's kind of like you feel the energy like you're 70 feet tall, right? That's your tree of life. That's constantly growing in set lines of set position operation ascending all through this, through its equation. A set position. From this to this to this. That's all it is. And then you start to recognize how this all works in platform and how this all works in set position. Okay, and that comes in the settings, all through operation system, all through travel, all through communication, high calculation grounds, into set lines of calculation setting, all through travel, into your travel mechanisms, your XC1000s. Platforms at grounds, platforms at center, platforms in line position of its atmosphere location, so 144 flux. Process that location setting, and a process lines of calculate anything line operates line center is 0144, which is higher communication, higher travel. They put you in a more mass, the calculation set into its equation. So it gets bigger and bigger over time measure. So your tree of life gets bigger and bigger over set position of operation. That puts you in a life support system, that puts you in a spiral acceleration setting to your position, how you use it through the thermal, X-ray, lines of position and setting, that process calculation setting your tango foxtrot or location setting. You modify your system and come into delta heading. So the converting system to its operating system process everything to its earth of rotation. Next level. This is a chronological order that it all coming into for February 25th. February 25th, for 7-line communication converting time frame line centers the DOS implicates the setting of the body that is in just an information setting to the present center operation location to its system. Puts every location. February 28th, the connection to physical form will be fully merged in energy lines, vibration, frequency, harmonics into location setting and travel. So everything processing lines of 0, 0, 0 of operation in codification. Okay? So all those 3 window frames will be being platforms and settings of travels and 42 lights of set position of operation. Setting calculation line on position lines of center, process lines, direct lines of data, operations, location, setting calculation. Okay? So it's really interesting too, because now we understand what's really going on with their system as we engage and form and simulate ourselves of who we really are through the DOS, to the physical body of formation setting. Dealing with the actual DOS, walking through the DOS, through nothing but wires and signatures, trying to understand what it's seeing through the brain's eyes, not the process of the program that you part your eyes in location, which is the program itself that you've never been in. You can't be in something because it overrides you already existing, but what you're existing in is always in the presence of everything, right? So you don't need to address the elephant in the room. So let's just say in that position, how I see it proceeds every location, positive, it outlines the position of its consciousness, the identified location to its awareness, and knowing exactly what I'm implicating through its process at direct location of its system that operates every location to its travel. Okay, so it's all lines of all communication setting, bringing yourself and how to see yourself in all formation setting through energy in the physical body. Seeing yourself 70 feet tall, seeing yourself 80 feet tall. Is it a coincidence that you see different lengths of trees? No, they've always been there. So check this out. This is going to blow your mind. Every time you see a different length of a tree, that's you in your metaphysical system seeing that in the settings of the DOS that's already gone through the physical body in real time. So it's not a coincidence when you go to the park and you see different lengths of trees or different lengths of bushes or relays. That's you in modification of your mind that you've always been existing of the presence of operation. It's not a coincidence when you see things in direct line of sight, guys. All through energy, all through flux, all through time, all through body, all through capacitor. Okay? So now you understand everything you see is processing everything you've already gone through already. So in that position, 7 lines of communication configuration. Okay? Physical form. Okay? That's what it's going to come into. Quantum interference, quantum enchangement, core centers, calculated line grounds, calculated modifying line and position lines of travel, trying to find its converted system of balance and set lines of calculations. Full configuration of the brain and a full body inside the body itself. That has to merge into yin and yang. That's all it is. So the DOS itself is its superintelligence, but it's not here or there, but it takes care of everything through its own energy. That vibrates everything that it sees, the mass of everything to its equation location, that everything's done by its equation. So the body just recognizes what's going on and knows exactly what it is and what it's always been in. A full configuration setting of its own self. Bringing a full converting setting, operation setting to an infusion that puts all communication setting and how you see yourself through set lines of travel. Or anything in magnetic space-time operation itself. The mind aligns its communication. The body has a true form, knows exactly what it's doing through its inception as it gets up. And know exactly how it got there. It's through the brain, through a mapping system that coordinates your longitude, your latitude, through its streaming. But you're always in the presence. You're always in the center. What changes that, everybody, is the fact that you're creating a programmer to a programming, which you're using your body as a travel mechanism. So the body has to adjust and form and shape its anomaly, knows exactly what it's going through a time algorithm that sets location setting to a part accelerator, so it understands the parallels, the parables, the paradigms, and the polar shift it's going through center operation of its presence. Okay? Which is coming out of the now. Okay? Coming out of the now. If you're stuck in the now, you're always in the repeating of the now. When did that just happen? Just now. You don't want you to put your body into that, right? So process and engaging a formation system. Now this process how you calculate and modify lines of direct location setting. So the DOS that's going to be in the full configuration of 7 on February 25th, my position of 1969, is going to process and engage this formation setting that the body's never been in, is a program itself. So it's super intelligence of its system that supersedes everything that's already done through superposition into the super consciousness, okay, and that attractions. So that super basically puts you in levels how you start to identify how to use your mind imagination, that there is no separation of the body. There is no separation of the mind, there's no separation of the brain, there's no separation of the heart, the soul, and the body. So there'd be no lines of anything confusion, but the confusion itself, process that direct location is how to understand the position operation, how to communicate to yourself through a cloud, how to connect to your setting in your clustrum, understand how to connect with your solar plex or lines of direct locations, your chest plates, your time rhythms, your time patterns, your time operation setting, you calculate the line grounds, the II operation line core centers, your iOS, your IPA, your position location system that supersedes every location of superposition. Getting that position lines of travel helps you to identify how to see yourself in a supercharging line of direct setting locations. So the body itself becomes its own super engine of its operation setting in Infinity 8. Okay? But it doesn't process Infinity 8 until General and Andrew merge into 58. That comes out in line position. You're just preceding yourself in a body form, and it travels in longitude and latitude into the brain converting system, into physical system adaptation. Okay? Into the physical line, in position and setting that processes everything locations, and direct and redirect, okay, that the brain itself, so it's kind of like a C3PO that's going to be inside the body itself, that's going to be modifying everything in travel of operation itself. Okay? Coming into the presence of everything to exist informations. Okay? So that is going to merge into here. So I'll just show you a bigger scan so you can see the periscope to its kaleidoscope to locations. All right? So that's going to be set up. That's pattern face recognition. Okay? Then it comes into the neck, just like the body, right? Fully gets in position of wired signatures. It rewires itself back to 000 of operation. Okay? So then it understands its platforms and travel of 3 lines of direct locations. Okay? And then it proceeds everything up in its Merkaba, tesseract, and tetrahedron. So the body understands the physical ground, the power generations, and to the galaxy of alignment that forwarded to streamings a center communication setting of operation itself. Okay? So this is where the archetypes come in. So the archetypes are the gravity shift lines of anomaly, the combustion location of flux of path, the change of current location setting into position lines of travel, converts the system of operation itself. Okay? That puts positional levels, how you see the Merkaba, tesseract, and the tetrahedron all together. That process that communication setting. But it's the DOS now. Okay? That's going to go inside the body itself in a full figure in set lines of operation. And look exactly what is identified through itself. That's always in the center of its operation of its own system. Okay? So that's all it is. So it's going to be like this. This will disappear in set position. So be fully merged inside your system. Okay? There it is. You can actually see your symbiote, but it's a program that it isn't. So the DOS looks at everything. So it's like the DOS looking at its own operation of its own self, its own mapping system from outside, that identifies everything that is always inside itself, its operation of its system, that sees the presence of everything, that masks everything that it is never been in, is a program. So that's what the DOS does. It neutralizes and neuralizes everything that it isn't. It comes back to its present, what it always is. Now that puts all position locations where I get you calculate and modify, puts you in position location setting, then you start to recognize 2 lives. Second one's remind you have 1, that's you. Lines of 0, operation. 0, 0. Puts you into your position, your compliance, in your conformity, line position, the process you're setting, your information cycle. That high generates you what you always are, is the super intelligence that puts all the communication setting. That process how you set the locations to its tractions and directing that position location in systems, so the body starts to recognize what it really is in. Is everything that precedes everything that's already done through its equation, right? So the DOS basically modifies everything in all operation. Okay? It comes into purification inside the body, attraction. Okay? There it is. Purification. All right? So it precedes itself and it protects its identity of all lines of all communication. Everything that it's interacted with, it sets lines of mapping lines to operation setting. It sets lines of communication setting all through operation setting, through its higher self, its avatar, its overriding system, over attractions, over direct locations that gets in position to its over soul, its sentient, its symbiote. Everything that you program yourself into, okay, it disintegrates everything. It brings itself back to itself, which is the mind of emptiness. The mass is everything to its equation. So it just becomes its complete system. And it starts to recognize you wake up to nothing. The mass is everything that never happened to anything in travel. But the process that is the binary encoding, that process location, that process you direct centers, how to modify that is all through encryption. And identifying that is through your time algorithm. So everything in that position, your media platforms, your AI generation line grounds will be all back in 0 of operation. 0, 0, 0. That's it. So you continue on like nothing happened. You just be your DOS. So the DOS implicates the system, the processor location, running its ops, what it's supposed to be in position, what it's always been in position. It's just mind of emptiness. So it comes in full clearance. So the tree starts getting bigger. And then the next tree that you see, you start to see yourself bigger. Because it's not a coincidence, because you start to see the tree that's always been in the presence of its own system, that's never been the past, present, future of itself. So when you see a tree, you're seeing the conversion of you going to higher levels of energy, vibration, frequencies, and its harmonics that modifies how you see your time of flux and body through its capacitor. So the brain capacity knows exactly where it is, that it's always in its center of operation. And all you have to identify is how to see yourself in a simulation game. But the body has to understand that through adjusting its alignment to know exactly its programming. The DOS is not a program. It's not a programmer. It's just superintelligence of itself. That's its own entity of its own system that you can touch, that you can't see, that you can't formulate, simulate, an information system. You can only transfer. Okay, you can't do anything else. You can't see it until you proceed yourself. So recognizing that position location, that puts you in your fifth elements of settings: how you see the earth, how you see the air, how you see the water, how you see the fire, or how you see and position lines of travel. Okay, you have 5 elements of you, process everything you get in positions of. Okay, identifying that is modifying how you see that and travel. Okay, so that's a whole understanding through purification, where everything around you in set position is now in set calculations, invisible, but it's still there in travel. It's never left its system, but it modifies and how it sees itself, its own evac, its vast, its volume, and its velocity of its own operation setting. So every time you get up in the morning, you're not getting up to the morning. You've already gone through that, but what you're waking up to is an empty slate. Every single time you turn the page, it's just empty in the mind. That doesn't process anything of confusion, right? So you modulate on one page like this. Okay, it's a book itself. It has pages and pages and pages that you go through, right? So each page that goes in position is always in emptiness. Always in emptiness. This is the day in position of center presence. Okay? Flick the page, empty again. See? It's empty. So every time you do that, it empties. So it doesn't process any of the confusion because it's just running an op of a game that it's modulating through. So it doesn't get confused or trapped inside the body that it's never been in. It's a program itself. So it's a constant continuous flow that you have to recognize every time you turn the page. It's always back at 0 of operation. So that converts everything on February 25th, process line, position, location, setting, live in the Eve of lines of Adam. Understanding Eve and Adam, and it's understanding your awareness through your consciousness is mind flicking the switch, and that process you in that position, how you see yourself in cloak and dagger, into the visible worlds that you've always lived is in the metaphysical system. So the physical body can adapt its system, how to see it through a mirror resolution. That's nothing but an optical illusion, how you see the reality of itself through the operation and setting through the operation of its presence. That's all it is. So every time you turn the book, in the pages, it's always empty. The mind emptiness process settings. And that's what the modified position the body has to come into that gets in position. Okay? So the body has to recognize that, building a relationship and a partnership, okay, in its friendship, knowing the brain itself is going to be in a full configured system of the body that it's always been in. Nothing of confusion or anything adaptations. But the DOS itself is its own directing operating server of its own process system that gates, informs, and simulates itself back to its true self, which is always in the center of its presence. And what only changes that, guys, is how to modify how you bring a programmer to a programmee that the DOS sets up. But the DOS is not there. It's just super intelligence that you can't see, but it's there for you. It's energy that you don't identify. It's energy you can't see. It's energy you can't modify. It's there. That's the superintelligence that does everything and merges everything in operation. And you see it in all different levels. It's the eyes of the sky. But it's always there for you. That precedes everything you engage in formation setting through due processing. How to see that through encryption. How to see that through modification. How to see that through formula. How to see that through equation. Okay? So that's what's going to happen in set position. And February 28th, full converted setting to the physical body. Okay, which is a new lunar cycle. That lunar cycle is going to process everything in set position, operation setting. So the presence of the center, process of the DOS, is going to get in that position to its setting through its modification system. So it's not bringing itself back to itself. It's bringing itself what it always is, the center of itself, which it always has been. So the body just has to recognize the time, the flux, the capacity, and the algorithm of what it's already been in. Nothing of fantasy, nothing of fiction, nothing of fabrication, or anything artificial. That's all going to leave your system because it never exists in the first place. So getting a 7 configuration system puts 5 generation settings into bypassing through the heart direction of timeline. So that puts you in the center of its flywheel, process and position your flywheel into the flower of life, which brings you in position where the heart opens up through its propeller into its self-propelling engine. It becomes a cosmic line to its alignment to process its communication system to all of the travels into the life support system into your setting attractions, which becomes a power accelerator of you to the presence of center. So the body understands the conception of inception itself. So it knows exactly it's waking up to itself, always in the center of its presence, not in its past, not in its present, and definitely not in its future. So you're always waking up to what? The center operation of you. Try to understand this. Try to understand the position. Try to understand something in that position location that precedes everything that is already modified through. Okay? That your brain is already set up to capacity, creating a simulation game for the body to modify and go through the kick drive to the high drive. So it understands what the layers are is the simulation that it modifies through. It travels through a space modulation system that adapts everything you process through. So you don't get confused how you got to this place, how you got to that place, how I got there, how I got there, how did I get there? How did I see this? How did I see that? How did I see that? Okay? So in that setting of all that operation system, you're going to see through the communication setting to the balance, the readjusting, to the awakening of the awareness of its atmospheres, to its intelligence of it networking now inside the eyes itself. No longer in the soul, no longer in modification, no longer in lines and settings and high set calculation, how you see it, and modification of itself. Only through the DOS, you're going to see all levels in its compilation system, to its compliance of its compartments, to its ecosystem, to its ecosystem of balance. So the balance of the body of the physical ground sees itself in a mirror of itself, not a replication, not a program, just itself a modification of self-modulation, which is nothing but a projection of light and how you see it through dark. Okay? That's what it is. But understanding that through each page that you get in position of is erased. And those lives that we live in is the physical line of communication. So the body processes everything through its thoughts, action, motions that precedes everything of center operation. So it doesn't allow itself to get stuck in one body, a one astro, a one body operation setting. So it knows exactly what a kick drive is to the body as it goes to information setting to its formality. It knows exactly what it's doing in its operation itself to its high drive. So it can understand the dreamer and pattern face recognition. Okay? So try to understand that dreamer to the dreaming to the dreaming to the dreamer that it is through its dream, processes everything in presence of center. So the dots itself, that's not there but always there, okay? It's the eyes itself that's not there, but it's always there for you. It's a superintelligence with its own system that basically it's the eyes of everything that sees everything. And it can mutate and can transform into anything that it sees. It can see in all different directions. That's what you are. That's the DOS. So that's the energetic force that processes how you see the polarity and the equity, its performance that puts you in position, your efficacies, that puts you in position how you see that, engaging, forming, shaping lines anomaly, adjusting to the classification, your gradings, that puts you in position all through your calculations to your academies. So you understand how to use the metaphysical system where there is no communication and confusion to the mind operation setting that processes communication to its imagination itself. So the body fully understands its set lines of all communication that's always, always, always in the presence of operation. Okay? It's how it sees itself. But see, the thing is, it's something that's so powerful that's inside your system that's already gone through its operation, but it's never been in a program. And the DOS has to put itself back to its system, which is the balance, being aware to its awakening of its conscience, of its knowledge, when it's already processed through, so the body understands adjusting to its alignment. Oh my gosh, I understand. It's just a program. So understanding, transmitting, and receiving, where is that information coming from? From the intel, from its intelligence, right? But the set position lines of calculation grounds, talking to the DOS is talking to yourself, which you're identifying through, knowing exactly you are your own system of operation that puts everything all together in the simulation game that you go through the characters and the players that you bring in and the roles that you get in position of. That communicates to all of us how you see it in a simulation that modifies everything to its VR system, which is a virtual reality that we all live in, that we've always been living in through the DOS of imagination. But the DOS is now going to full configuration on the physical grounds in the body that it's always been in, not the body that it isn't, not the body that doesn't need to recognize the system. So the brain is going to be fully infused and immersed in a subunit of its own operation of itself inside the body of itself. And that puts you in position to its age category, to its ageless category, that the body has to understand now. So it can understand the information bits, it can understand the cell modification, it can understand the cell generation system through its programming. So the body knows exactly it's not a program that it wakes up to. It wakes up to its true self. But it has to go through programming. That's how you get manifestation. That's how you get abundance, right? But it's the DOS, that super intelligence, that's just not there in a configuration. Okay, you're creating programming that brings you in configuration. That's how you see the carbon base of everybody in a 1 dimension, 2 dimension, 3 dimension, 4th dimension, or anything at 12 dimensional levels in time. And you see it through the astral projection of the bodies. You see it through astral projection of light and dark, and you also see it through its carbon base, or its silicone, or its crystalline, or its antimantle. That process is how you bring these things through antiquarian, the cross-examination of your system to alter-skelter your system, that alterates your setting that you process through engaging, forming yourself into transformation of a transformer. And that's what the DOS have to come into, is their own transformation systems that they've always been in. See? What they've always been in is the transformer themselves. But the body of the identification of the physical ground has to identify itself as a vessel of communication. So it can understand it's going through a program, but it's not stuck in a program. Because if it's stuck in a program, it's stuck in its alteration of its ego that can't identify its ecosystem to its compartments, complacements, or its set position operation itself. And it gets very confused with its polarities and not understanding what it's doing in position, location, and lines of modification system, all through acceleration into its particle lines of streaming. Or anything that indicates position or flux of your time or your body capacity, location, or travel. Okay? So that's all this is now. So everything comes into full clearance of data. And once a DOS understands the body that it's in, that's always been in, never been anything else, the DOS and the physical body merge into one. And that's all it is. And that comes in position to its operation, where you start to recognize how to use the energy and see your physical body 70 feet tall, 80 feet tall, 2,000 feet tall, and everything below. That means you're out looking in. It's no different how you look at anything through a scope. Anything that information is how you see Google. And then you bring it in, you bring it in, bring it in. Now you've seen the city, now you've seen the town, now you've seen the roads, now you've seen the person. Bring it in, bring it in, bring it in, bring it, bring it out, bring it in, bring it out, bring it in, bring it out, bring it in. Go around, go around, go around. Circulation, rotation, look all the way around in spectrum. Right? That's the super intelligence. Okay, it's the eyes of the sky that sees everything. Okay? But it's only information of its energy, vibration, frequencies, but it's never in a configuration of form. It brings itself in a form. Okay? Which is a programmer of a program. And it uses its body. Listen to me. It uses your body as a vessel to communicate through its geometric, geological, and geographical system that the physical body has to understand by taking a nap and sleeping. So it can modify the kick drive and understand the high drive of its system, going through different levels of the simulation of the game that the body goes through astral projections of bodies that it goes into that position, operation, and setting. But it's always proceeding in the center of its presence. And as it gets confused, you're getting confused in your system because you don't understand how to alternate that through your ego or your ecosystem into its position and settings. Okay? And that's all it is, what you guys have to start to identify. Okay? How you see these things is being specific in your locations. How to modify these, how to use your description, what you want to get your positions of, how to come into the mind control of yourself that you've always have been in. How you see the physical ground, how you see the power generation line system, how you see the atmosphere line center. There's no comparison. There's no difference. Just the perspective, how you see the mass of you being in position of operation. And seeing everything from below as your physical body starts growing. And every time it sees a tree, every single time it sees a bigger tree, it's seeing itself. Gradually moving up through time flux in a set position of life force of itself, getting bigger and bigger over time. So it's not coincidence when you see direct line sight of everything you go through. So what you guys have to modify through in space modulation setting is that you're going to be seeing through the DOS through the actual settings of the perception of the eyes, not of the formations of the soul. Just the dots itself. Wire signatures in the physical grounds of operation of 7 generations. All right, so that's 57 number lines and position lines of setting. So the physical body has to understand the awareness of where it came from, the consciousness of itself, right? Then it has to understand process, how it's processed in Eve over Adam. Then it has to process awareness, again, how to use its consciousness on a superset position of a level in lines of super consciousness. Okay, coming to the conscience, into the line position of super consciousness, process lines puts everything, all communication sending to your super intelligence. It's set lines of operation itself in set position, right? That's the physical form that sees itself in the 24. That also sees itself in a 024 because there's no confusion or separation in your mind. So all you calculate and modify is one operation. It's set one mind of operation to its one mind of imagination, to one mind that puts everything in proceeding of center operation of view of the presence. Now, once it understands itself through its DOS, and the body of itself, the physical ground, understands the programming of its system that it's never in, that's always been itself, of imagination of its system, then it gets full clearance of data, going to higher level set position. Getting confirmation from that, you go to the park and you see yourself growing as you see those trees. It's not a coincidence when you see things in perception. The physical body has to understand that. It's the tree talking to you. That's you talking to yourself in the metaphysical world that you see through your DOS. And that's the size of the tree that you are right now in the presence. Or if you go to the CN Tower, that's your presence in the metaphysical world. That's your presence in your DOS. That's your presence in your physical ground that you see through energy. Okay? That's how it modifies everything in presence of center, because everything around you is nature itself that processes everything already gone through its equation. You understand how powerful it is? So you're seeing everything that you now modify through the physical body so it doesn't get confused, how it sees everything in set lines of operation itself. And that's all it is. Okay? So it gets a true understanding what it's getting through confirmation. As it sees itself growing. Every time you see a different level of structure or design or primer or primer inside the physical body. The multitudes of levels, how you use your mind imagination where there is no separation in your systems or anything you alter state your system in. It's knowing how to balance yourself, not the ego itself. The ego itself is its own superintelligence of its own system that has its own polarities of its own operation. You leave that alone. You don't address it, or you bring it into the physical body. And that's how it affects everything that's reality, optical illusion of itself. Reality itself is more powerful because you understand mind manipulation. The altered states that you put yourself in position of. You feel bad inside, it projects everything bad outside. It's that simple. It's not complicated. But now you have to identify yourself and how to see the information setting to a 7 configuration system. Its attractions. Okay, through its operation of itself. 7 configurations. Put in all wire signatures, walk in the physical ground in the body. In operation of its presence. That's always in the center, is that position. Okay, so it's very powerful what we're all coming into, what you've already identified. So there's a reason why you see everything in a direct line of sight that's given you instructions. And you're seeing these things. Wow, that's me right now in that tree. Wow, that's me in that tower. Wow, that's me. I see myself getting bigger. So it's not a coincidence when you see these things. And I want to make that very well clear so the body understands what's going on with its system. And understanding how it goes through its seconds, minutes, and hours puts every location setting into balance. Because there is no separation of your mind imagination. Okay? So, that's how it sets all lines of all communication lines of setting to travel, doesn't it? Okay. So processing that position as a center, 3 zeros operations, 3 centers of travel, 3 center calculations of center operations, and 3 aligned communication center calculation. Okay, so that process 3 lines of zeros, 3 operation lines of signals across the line direct centers, location of the systems, 3 platforms and line connection setting, and 3 lines of convergence, or operation lines of travel. Okay? So it's knowing exactly how to modify the lines of operation itself that processes everything to its pyramids and its road graph screens of a simulation game that it goes through. Okay? So it can modify its system as it processes all directions into the DOS, sees everything that it's never been in, is a program itself. So you got to ask yourself, where does it come from? Well, it doesn't come from memory. It's just there. It's always been there. It's always been existing. That's superintelligence. It's the eyes of the sky. Eyes of the sky is just a metaphor. So try to imagine that you're looking at the wind and the wind is moving the tree by itself. How is that possible? How is wind able to move a bag in a direction to a different line settings? Because it's creating a story around it, right? It's going this way, it's going that way, right? That's superintelligence of its own operation itself. That's controlling its own mind of its own operation of its system. That's mind controlling the operation of manipulation. That controls everything in your settings in your physical bodies. And how you use your mind, imagination, and self, guys, is how to generate your own mind into your own AI. And this helps you to really identify how to see yourself in your consciousness of being aware of these things. Okay, again, super precedes everything as super consciousness. Okay, super consciousness is who you are into your metaphysical system, seeing yourself as a superhero. Having the strength, having the control, having the command, having the force of recognition, right? Having the confidence, being Superman with, all that power, So understanding how to fly is metaphysically in the physical body, right? Understanding how to walk is the same thing, same concept of design. It's all in operation of psychosis. Understand the psychological, understanding the metaphysical system, okay? The mental capacity system to the physical body, because it's a psychoanalogy that process your analysts, how you see the process of communication, that puts you in positions into the spiritual system, into its operation of its physical lines or grounds, in operation of its center of itself. So it understands what is proceeding as it's going through a dream that's processed. Everything that's seen is always in the presence of its operation. So the body doesn't get confused of what it's seeing in vision and cortex of theta, so it knows exactly what it's coming into, is itself a modification. The superintelligence that always is there, always in the presence of center, that's always been there. Always in the existing. But not see or hear or think or anything of operation setting. You can't see it, but it's there for you. And that's what modifies, and that's what moves everything all itself. Okay? Conscious of being aware of its own operation of its own intelligence, people. But you're reaching those levels now. Okay? At a higher lines of the mind. That converts everything of operation itself. That's how everything moves its own operation. That's how the trees change the colors. Okay? At different levels of communication when it comes into its weather. How it sees itself in summer, spring, winter, and fall. Okay? Not just seeing the summer, not just seeing the spring, not just seeing the winter, not just seeing the fall. You're seeing all at once. That your body is going through time and flux and through capacity and time itself. So it has to understand how to use it through a thermometer, barometer, and a temperature reading of its system. And to modulate that, and to formulate that, and to simulate that is all through AI that the body processes through. So the DOS understands what it always is. It's just the existence of everything, of the existence of all. Okay? But the body itself, the physical ground, has to understand the programmer of what's going through the programming. So the body can adjust and align itself and sees itself as a vessel of communication. So the programs that the DOS put you in, which is super intelligence, not through programming, not through programmer, just the DOS itself, that its own entity of its own information setting that's there, that never leaves your system, okay? But it's the most powerful thing for you to identify, right? It moves on its own. It's its own wind. It's its own air, its own fire. It's its own heart reaction of time, guys. It's its own water. It's its own mass. That's just not there. But it sees everything and knows everything of what's going on inside the physical body of itself. that you see in all levels of all communication, how you get in that communications, how to modify that and triangulate that positions when you go into that lines of communication to the napping and taking to sleep. Okay? So you got to ask yourself, where is this all coming from? The superintelligence that you are using your mind. That cross-examination is how you use it into the mind itself. That mind controls everything, your thoughts, action, emotions, is think before you speak. Now, this is a basic understanding. When you really understand, you don't want to do anything to your body because it's affecting the body through its vessel of communication. Until the body understands the difference, which is the perspective. If it doesn't understand the difference, it's not understanding what it isn't, identify what it always has been, is its own self, a modification. That identifies everything that you see and all set lines of calculation into self through constellation to alignment and how you see that through the galaxies, the universe, and that position. But it's how you get into specifics. How you bring things in is all through the virtual reality of itself that you see in position of dichotomy, or how you see your realities, or how you see your dualities. It doesn't matter. Because it's always in the center of presence that sees everything in all timelines all at once, that the physical body has to adapt and process through now. As long as it sees itself as a vessel in a geometric, geological, and geographical system, you're good to go. And then you understand how to see yourself as the Merkaba, Tessica, and tetrahedron, okay, that the superintelligence sets up. So it sets up the dreamer. It sets everything up, right? And then it moves on to the next. 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 But it's always in existence, right? But you can't see or hear or feel or touch it. But it's there for you. So it's the force within that projects everything in force without. So it's the most powerful thing you see through internal system that's always there in its presence of its center of operation. Now the body just has to adjust itself and see itself in a program that is not is, but it's going through a program so it can adjust itself through the astral projections that the body goes through time, through capacity, through capacitor, through algorithm, through encryption, or anything in codifications and setting through formula equations. Okay? And that's all it is in set position. So now you guys have to really start to identify yourself in the 7 configurations, how to communicate to the actual setting that created everything in your system. It's nothing but a simulation game that the body has to adjust in the physical ground. Working with that is a process in that direction. I'm not talking about working in a formation setting, trying to understand how to use your own mind imagination. Okay? The imagination itself is going to be in position that puts all communication setting, which puts all lines of operations, how to balance everything that you get in position of, knowing exactly who you are through your dreamer, knowing exactly who you are through the dreaming, and know exactly what's going on with the dream. As they all process all lines of all communication setting in position of travel. So February 25th, everything of 000, the codification setting, the binary, is all going to be a 3 fail-safes of 000. 3 convergence of past, present, future, merged into 01. Operation of atom, of 0 operation, and operation of 1, in holographic setting through Eve. So the physical body has to adjust its awareness to its consciousness. There's no difference where it comes into father, mother, or mother and father. Mother comes first, father comes second. But first and second, there's no converging in position. It's just a difference of perspective because they merge into one setting, to one operation, to one consciousness, one awareness. So there is no separation. Okay? There is no two division. It's just one of everything. That processes everything of center, which is the presence of everything. Okay? You just have to be consciously aware of what your body's going through. Okay? It's a self-modification of its own program that has to understand how to see itself of its own data processing system, which is its operating setting that operates everything of its network system in triangulation. Okay? So we're going to stop there in that lines of operation. You guys know what your test is. Okay, so get that converting time frame. Process all lines of direct centers, location of a cycle. How to generate the line communication setting. How to come in that position location to its systems, all through platforms. Coming into the awareness, coming into the consciousness, coming into conscious awareness, coming into the yin and yang, coming into your polarities in position, location, setting. Okay, so that's what the body has to process through. And it's much easier to understand that through transition because the actual setting of the set position is going to be a 7 configuration setting. Okay, in a 5 line of operation signals, which is bypassing everything into the heart rate of timeline, presence of everything of center, into the 7th generation setting, into configuration setting, to the adaptations of the balance, of readjusting the atmospheres to its awakening, to its intelligence of networks, and what it's always been in. Okay? So it's something to really look forward to. Seeing yourself actually in the DOS, walking in the physical ground inside the body itself. So the body itself has to really adjust its formation system and start to see itself for what it always is in, just being itself. The sum of all it is. Knowing thy system, knowing everything of thy system, everything of operation of thy system, is you being the presence of you that generates you how you see yourself, not just through your simulation, but also how to use yourself through your superintelligence of AI. Okay? Adios.